My name is Rana Sajad. I'm a practicing lawyer based here in Lahore. My office is not too far from here. I practice here in an office on Turner Road. And I'm very thankful to the Punjab Judicial Academy for inviting me here today to address this august audience. I look at you as the chosen ones who have been given this responsibility to act as commercial court judges, I think, which is an honor and a privilege. And for me to be here talking about commercial dispute resolution, it's truly an honor and a privilege. And in addition to the Punjab Judicial Academy, I'd like to thank the Lahore High Court Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Muhammad Qasim Sahab, and then Mr. Justice Shahid Kareem Sahab, and Mr. Justice Jawad Hassan Sahab, whose vision has been driving this change. So I'm very thankful to them also. Now, before I get started on global experience in the commercial dispute resolution, I would just like to lay the foundation of my presentation. So in the next 75 minutes or so, I'll be focusing on experiences with commercial dispute resolution around the world. So the experiences are fairly diverse. We will be talking about domestic commercial courts. We'll be talking a bit about arbitration. We'll be talking about international commercial courts. The idea basically is to draw from the experience of other jurisdictions. In some cases, the experience has been good, in others, not so good. So the idea and the hope is that we learn from them, and hopefully while performing your duties, you're able to avoid some of the mistakes or pitfalls that those jurisdictions experience, and build on some of the strengths or the good experiences of those jurisdictions. Because again, this is a very, very important initiative, and we want to make sure that all those who are entrusted with this responsibility do a good job and make sure this initiative gets off the ground in a successful way. So I'll just give a brief background. As you all know, one of the objectives of this entire workshop is to make sure that eventually Pakistan's rankings in the World Bank Group Ease of Doing Business Index improves. Unfortunately, it's very low right now. And the idea basically is, by having commercial courts, we have a forum whereby all disputes related to commercial matters, specifically enforcement of contracts, are resolved in a very expeditious manner. So currently, of course, I won't go into the details. We're 156th in a ranking of 190 countries. And it takes almost 3 years to resolve a commercial dispute, which is way too long. To put this in perspective, in a country like Singapore, a commercial dispute is resolved in 164 days, which is about 5 to 6 months. Similarly, in New Zealand, it takes about 216 days. UK, surprisingly, takes 437 days, which is about 14-15 months, which is still not that long compared to Pakistan. But considering it's the UK, you would expect them to do better. But still, I think their resolution disposal rate is pretty good. Now, specialized courts. What is the objective of setting up a specialized court? I mean, the obvious objective is that you have people with specialized knowledge, expertise, experience in a certain area to decide disputes of a certain type. Now, specialization has its own advantages. The advantage is, of course, if an expert judge who has experience in that area decides an issue, his approach, his perspective would be very different from a generalist judge. With due respect to the judges that we have pretty much around the world, they're called generalist judges because they can deal with a lot of matters within a certain area of law. So being a specialist judge, you have that advantage that you have a certain background in that particular area, which allows you to apply the law to the facts in a certain way, to use the evidence in a certain way, to arrive at a fair conclusion, which would be a lot better than what a generalist judge would do. So greater efficiency, you can decide cases quicker because you understand the issues better. So I'll give you the example. If you're a commercial court judge and you're deciding a dispute in the energy sector, unfortunately, a lot of the judges who are generalist judges might not have that technical knowledge to understand unique issues of the energy sector. Same goes for telecom, electronics. You would have, or you should have, the edge in terms of that background knowledge, right? So knowledge is key, and I would urge you, of course, you're all very respectable people and you know the law a lot more than I do, but I think as an approach, I would urge you to keep reading up on relevant issues. So for instance, if you think in the first 6 months of your commercial judge position, you are deciding a lot of energy sector issues. It is not sufficient just to read the file and understand the issues. To have a bigger picture, a broader perspective, you need to have knowledge outside of the file as well. Only then you'll be able to decide the cases better. So the industry knowledge, industry expertise is key. So that is something which is an ongoing process. You can't just say, I read one book on commercial courts, I read one book on energy law. That is not sufficient. Because things are changing very rapidly all the time. You have to be up to date on all the developments. So that is one thing I would encourage you to do. Higher quality decisions. That is the expectation from a special commercial court judge. That generally and broadly speaking, his or her decision in a commercial matter would be better than a generalist judge because, again, for the same reasons. More expertise, more experience, better understanding of the technical issues. Enhancing uniformity of decisions. Unfortunately, in common law jurisdictions, this is a problem not unique to Pakistan. It's true for the UK, the US as well. We lawyers complain about lack of authoritative judgments. We say, okay, on this issue we have one judgment, you'll find two judgments which are in complete contrast to this judgment. So one upside, one advantage of a commercial court judge and decisions coming out of those courts is that you can have authoritative and relatively more uniform and consistent judgments. Because again, because of your knowledge, because of your understanding, there will be less chance of contradictions in judgments passed by you and your learned brothers, right? And even your own judgment, let's say you decide the same issue 2-3 years later, there will be more consistency. And that is great for the jurisprudence in that particular area. Commercial law, again, is something very important. And if you have consistent, coherent jurisprudence, that helps the entire legal framework as well. And of course, the users of this service, the litigants who come to the courts, if they have an idea about the consistency of the decisions, they will have more faith. They will trust the system more. There'll be more satisfaction. We talk about access to justice. Access to justice does not mean that you go to court and you get a decision. It doesn't just mean you get a fair decision. It means a decision which is reasoned, which is given by somebody who understands the issues well, right? So the users will be happy, you'll have better jurisprudence, and the entire system benefits from it. Now, potential disadvantages. So like anything in the world, there's no ideal solution or formula to dispute resolution. Anything that has advantages also has its share of disadvantages. So for commercial court judges, again, learning from the experience from around the world, one of the problems that they see with specialized court or let's say commercial court judges is that they have a very narrow perspective. So let's say you're a commercial court judge for 2 to 3 years and you only are hearing commercial cases, which is the way it's supposed to be. But after a while, they think that you start thinking in a certain way, which has its own benefits, but then the downside is your perspective becomes narrow and perhaps that affects the quality of your judgments also. So it's necessary, as I said, to know your industry, the area of law you're dealing with. At the same time, do not completely lose touch with other areas of law because as you know way better than I do, law is an interplay of different areas of law. There are hardly any cases in which only one area of law is done. There is always an interplay between 2, 3, 4 different areas. So I think one of the keys is, one of the things that we've learned from the global experiences is that you need to be up to date or connected to some other areas of law as well that are relevant for your judgments. Another sort of allegation or criticism is that when you are a commercial court judge, you deal with a certain type of lawyers. You have to decide cases of a certain type of parties, right? So commercial court judges, they have to deal with business disputes, companies, right? And company lawyers, although the number is growing, but it is not as large as, let's say, criminal lawyers or civil lawyers. So there's a specialized group of people who will be coming to your court. And it's human nature. You know, we actually talk about it too, that, you know, familiarity is good to a certain extent, but after a while, you know, too much familiarity has its disadvantages. So some people believe, one of the criticism is that if you are dealing with the same lawyers over and over again, there could be prejudice or bias in your decisions because you've seen the same person a lot of times. And if, let's say, that person is a good lawyer, so you have this presumption in your head when they walk into the court that I think he will argue a good case, I think he has a strong case, I think I should decide in his favor. Nothing disrespectful to the judges, it's human nature, but they say that is also something we have to watch out for because this prejudice, bias, if it comes in, it defeats the whole purpose. So again, that is one of the things we've learned from the global experiences. And then of course, in other countries which are not that developed, There's cronyism, there's favoritism, nepotism. This is something that is exploited by some interest groups in societies as well. That is something specialized court judges have to be careful about. Again, don't pigeonhole yourself, don't restrict yourself to one area. If let's say you have deciding commercial cases, again, keep in touch with other areas as well. So let's say if it's an energy sector dispute, intellectual property might be a relevant issue in that. If it's a telecom issue, knowledge of basic contracts, of course, that's true for all cases, that's important as well. So do not compartmentalize yourself, have a broad perspective. So another criticism is that there is a select group of judges who will be deciding commercial court matters. And because of a fewer number of people, the judgments are of a certain type. Because they say there is value in diversity. Let's say there are 10, 15 commercial court judges deciding certain commercial matters. Compare that to, let's say, 30 commercial court judges. What you will get from the commercial court judges with a larger number is possibly a better overarching legal framework or jurisprudence, because there are different people applying the law in different ways. So there's a richness to it. But again, you could also argue that if you have more judges, there could be more contradictions as well. So again, there's no ideal one right formula, but that is something you have to be mindful of, because you will be working together, you'll be perhaps discussing some issues as well, not specific to cases, but you have to be mindful that you don't sort of restrict yourself to a certain type of view or perspective. That is something that could affect the quality of your judgments. Undue power, I think this is a little unfair criticism. They say if there are, let's say, 10, 15 commercial court judges, they have undue power in deciding cases. By power, they don't mean any illegal power. What they mean is that you are concentrating commercial court judgments in the hands and minds of a few people, right? But if you go back to what I said at the outset, the benefit of specialization is you just allow a certain number of people to do it, but then the problem is if there's too much power, the laws start getting shaped in a certain way, right? So you have to be careful about that as well. Now, objective of commercial courts. So every country that has set up commercial courts, please go ahead.
हमको एक खास लेवल तक चीज़ों को रियलाइज होंगे, तो यही बैठ जाएंगे हायर कोर्ट्स में जाएंगे, तो वो तो इस प्रोसेस से नहीं गुजरे, वो इन चीज़ों से familiar नहीं हुए, इस तरह से नहीं गुजरे, तो क्या रिजल्ट करेंगे?
That's a valid question. So my initial answer to this is that at the appellate level, I mean, so the merits aren't that important because the key issues have already been decided. And I think there is a presumption that a high court judge has a certain level of knowledge and experience. Again, it is not fair to generalize. I mean, there are better judges and they're not, so good judges. But I think that's the presumption. But I see your point. I agree with it, that the training does not have to stop at this level. But again, I'll be very honest with you. The senior the judge is, the higher the level is, the difficult it is to convince them to be trained. Again, it's not a problem unique to Pakistan, it's true for around the world. Very quickly, I once was discussing this with a United Nations official. I said that, how do we train judges, especially Superior Court judges? He said, the way we frame it is we don't call it training. We fly in judges from abroad and we say, let's have a roundtable discussion. You don't call it training. Nobody gets offended. They don't feel disrespected. They feel, we're having a roundtable discussion, but in the process, they're actually being trained. So it's how you frame it as well. Maybe at some point we'll have to do this in Pakistan. Again, it's not a suggestion, but I'm just saying. So, but I completely hear your point, because at some point, when inshallah you will start giving judgments, which will, let's say, be appealed, we need to have competent judges who understand the issues at least as well as you do. Preferably better than you do, because they have bigger responsibility. They will either overturn your decision or uphold it. So I agree with you. But again, this is a start of the process. Hopefully, things will move in that direction as well. Any other question? Feel free to interrupt me anytime. Okay, moving along. So the objectives are sometimes different. So let's say a country could set up commercial courts because they've passed a new law. And they think this is a controversial law. and because of that, there will be a lot of litigation. People will petition the courts, to exercise their rights. So a country says, okay, to deal with this, we'll set up courts that will deal exclusively with matters pertaining to this particular piece of legislation. So that could be one of the. That is not the case here. We've set it up. We already have the law. There's no new legislation as such. But the idea is to deal with commercial court cases. So in that particular case, the goal is to set it up for a short term, sometimes medium term, sometimes long term, right? Because if you think the response for that from that new litigation would be overwhelming in terms of more petitions in the courts, you'll say, okay, let's set up these courts for 2 years or 3 years. After that, things will settle down. We won't need these courts that much, and then we can move on. But in this case, as I understand it, and as done around the world generally, commercial courts once set up, it's not for a temporary purpose, it's for the long term, which is good because it essentially means that you're dealing with commercial activities which don't really stop. As the economy grows, there's more economic activity, there's more disputes. So of course, you need more specialized courts. So in our case, it's not temporary. I understand it to be permanent. And of course, you have to deal with it accordingly. If a judge knows I've been appointed for a short time, these courts will disappear. In a couple of years, I think his or her approach would be different, as opposed to somebody who knows this is a permanent position or these courts will be around for a long time. Inconsistent judgment. So let's say litigants could complain. We go to courts, let's say we go to civil court, district court, even high court, and judgments are inconsistent. They're contradictory judgments, and we need to have a forum, a specialized forum, which can avoid inconsistency. As I said at the start, uniformity, consistency is important. So in that case, it's helpful to have a specialized court to avoid any inconsistencies. I think, I'm not sure how valid that reason is for our case, but to a certain extent, as a commercial lawyer myself, I think there are inconsistencies sometimes, and because of the commercial courts, hopefully we'll be able to avoid that as well. So backlog of cases, of course, that's sort of a very old problem we have had. And the argument basically is, around the world also, commercial courts are set up for the expeditious resolution of disputes because the economy depends on it. People could ask, people could say, why are commercial cases so important? Why aren't family cases as important or other civil cases? Why are they being given priority? I would argue that your economy depends on quick resolution of disputes. Foreign investors go to countries where the judicial system is functional, it's effective. That's a big consideration. I mean, generally there is no direct correlation, but a lot of foreign investors consider this when they go to a country. They look at how effective the system is. So if commercial courts are functioning well, that will help foreign investment, that will help economic activity in the country as well. So it's important in that sense, and that will deal with the backlog of cases. If a foreign investor knows I go to Pakistan, and of course if there's no arbitration clause, I have to go before local courts, and they know the local courts will not decide the case for at least 3 years, going by the World Bank metrics, this will discourage them from investing in Pakistan, as opposed to a foreign investor thinking, oh, Pakistan, by the way, they have commercial courts, and commercial courts are deciding cases in 6 months, 3 months, even 1 year. More importantly, there are always two components. It's not how quickly you give the decision, it's the quality of the decision. So a litigant could say, oh, I just want the decision in 3 months, but if unfortunately the decision doesn't have any valid reasoning, it's not a fair decision, defeats the purpose. Same goes for a good decision given very late. Good decision come after 4 years, like what's the point? So there has to be a balance between the two. You have to make sure quality decisions and prompt decisions. So there are different models of judicial specialization. I won't go into the details. So around the world, since we're talking about global experiences, different models are set up. So in some countries, they set up exclusive commercial courts. They have a separate building, separate registry, separate administrative services. Staff is separate. Then of course there's the concept of having a bench. And then of course there's something called an ad hoc panel. So whereby there's this implicit understanding that a certain type of cases will be assigned to certain type of judges. There is no formal mechanism, but informally. So there's different judicial models. But in our case, my understanding is it is basically will work like a division or a bench of the court, which is fine because I think that helps us because we don't have to pass new legislation. So once this thing becomes successful, even if we have to pass legislation, it will be easier to show the lawmakers that this has gone very well. We need to formalize this mechanism by setting up courts in a different manner. I'll talk briefly about English Commercial Code. Everybody talks about it. They think this is one of the most important codes in the world. And one of the reasons why the English Commercial Code is so important is not that it's very old, but it's because a lot of the international commercial and business disputes stipulate that the governing law of the contract will be English law. So you have a commercial contract, parties say this contract will be governed by English law. So let's say one party is from Pakistan, one is from Germany. The German party will not agree on Pakistani law, Pakistani party will not in German law. They decide, okay, let's go for a neutral law which has good developed jurisprudence. English law is one of them. You could have New York law, even French laws in some cases. So because of that, a lot of the matters end up before English commercial courts. And of course, they've been doing it for a long time. And of course, they deal with both domestic and international disputes. So the English Commercial Code is not, technically speaking, an international commercial code. It's essentially a domestic code which also deals with international matters. So their jurisdiction basically is over disputes that have a connection with the UK. So the parties are residents, let's say companies that are incorporated in the UK, or if the parties have done some part of the business in the UK, so there is a nexus with the jurisdiction, and then they decide that dispute. Arbitration actually takes up about 30% of their caseload. So by arbitration, the types of disputes that would go before the English commercial courts would be, I want to enforce the arbitration agreement or agreement in which English law is the governing law. A party could also go to UK commercial court if they want to challenge the validity of the arbitration award, arbitration agreement. They could say this was not a valid agreement, this was not entered into with our consent, therefore this agreement should be declared invalid and we cannot arbitrate. Then they would go to English commercial court. If an arbitration proceedings have been completed, you have an award, arbitral award. If a party wants to challenge it, they would also go to the English commercial court if the law is English commercial law, and especially if the seat of arbitration is the UK. So in all those cases, they have to deal with a lot of arbitration matters, and they end up being international for the most part. And so their jurisdiction essentially relates to challenges to awards, appeal on a point of law. So for those of you familiar again with arbitration, one of the benefits of arbitration is that there is no appeal of the award. It's final and binding. Of course, there are certain grounds on the basis of which you can challenge the award, technical grounds, arbitrator misconduct, lack of due process of law and all those. But the UK commercial courts are different in the sense that they, I believe, are either the only one or one of the very few commercial courts around the world that have jurisdiction to even set aside an award, arbitral award, on the basis of a point of law. Generally, courts, whether it's commercial court or civil court, or they're not supposed to go behind the award to set it aside, but English commercial courts have that power as well, which I think is a very broad power. Injunctions enforcement, of course, the parties go to English commercial courts to seek a stay order, injunctive relief for preservation of assets, even for appointment of an arbitrator. Just the way parties go to civil court here to appoint an arbitrator if there is no agreement, the UK commercial courts perform that function as well. Some of the complex disputes that they are involved with or decide are disputes over contracts, business documents, insurance and reinsurance, sale of commodities, import-export. So there's a wide variety of cases. So another code I want to talk about, since we're discussing global experiences, is one code in the US. It's called the Delaware Court of Chancery. So Chancery is a word that comes from chancellor. So back in the day, in the old days, the king used to make the laws 300-400 years ago, and the chancellor was the one who used to decide disputes. So basically the legacy has continued, and in the US, Delaware, I believe this court was set up about 300 years ago. It's one of the oldest courts, and a large number of companies around the world, even Pakistanis, if they want to register a company in the US, they would register it in Delaware. Delaware is a state in the US which is known for its company incorporation. And one of the main reasons why parties register their companies in Delaware is because of this court. This court has a lot of trust and it has a very good reputation. So this court essentially works like a business/commercial court. One chancellor, essentially like a judge, will hear the case and decide. There is no bench as such. Of course, they're skilled and trained in corporate law, commercial law. And there is no requirement of a jury, because in the US there is a jury requirement for a lot of the proceedings. There is no such requirement either. Let me talk about some of the underwhelming experiences, some of the cases or countries in which this commercial court did not go very well. So there's one example of Tanzania, a country in Africa. So about 20 years ago, they set up these specialized commercial courts there. And the idea basically was to facilitate business transactions and all that. But unfortunately, what happened was, even after setting up the commercial courts, the economic activity or foreign investment coming into Tanzania did not change. And people were curious, what happened? You know, we set up the commercial courts, it's good for the economy, foreign investors will come in. I see the problem was that concerning the state of Tanzania, they did not care about the courts or their existence. It did not matter to them whether the courts were commercial courts or regular courts, because the way they did business, you know, they did not follow the law. So if they did not follow the law, they did not care about going to court or responding to a petition or a plaint filed against them. So you cannot generalize. Just because you set up a commercial court does not necessarily mean that your economy will take off and become a fast growing economy. Unfortunately, that is not the case. There are a lot of other things that work as well. But commercial court judges still have a very important role to play. Whatever little cases, matters come to you, if they're decided effectively and decisions are of quality, it helps the country's reputation, right? So we're not expecting miracles overnight. We're expecting even small change. You know, you start with a small change and then you move on. But so Tanzania, the experience wasn't good. Another is Peru in Latin America, South America. In 2005, they set up these specialized courts. And in the first year, they did very well. The case disposal was very good. The quality of the decisions was very good. The government was very happy. And as a result, what they did was they increased their caseload by 11 times. So let's say they're deciding 1,000 cases in 1 year. The government expected them to decide 11,000 cases. And not surprisingly, what happened was the quality of the judgments went down, case disposal rate got worse, so it backfired. So the expression for that is being a victim of your own success. You're so successful that you eventually become a victim of it. So you have to strike that balance. Again, I'm not suggesting that you should have a certain caseload. Of course, that is something to be decided in due course. But I think if you are overburdened with a certain number of cases and the expectation is, you know, you're a specialized court, you should be able to deal with it. I think that would be an unfair expectation. So that's one of the things we've learned from the experience in Peru, that I think you should start slow, because everybody, you know, you need some time to acquaint yourself, you know, with relevant laws, procedures, and you cannot expect, let's say after the first year, second year, that you're burdened with so many cases that it becomes just unsustainable. So that's one of the things we've learned from the experience in Peru. Cross-border transactions, I've referred to international disputes. So what happens is, when a foreign investor comes to Pakistan, let's say there's a Chinese company coming to Pakistan, they invest in Pakistan. Any investor who comes into Pakistan, why would they trust? If you go invest in China, Germany, England, America, you would not trust. By trust, I don't mean that the courts are you know, not functioning properly. What I mean is, you would prefer your own local court. You don't know the system that well, right? There's this uncertainty. So that is why a lot of the foreign investors, businesses, international, they choose international arbitration, whereby there's a neutral forum, there'll be a neutral arbitrator, generally of a neutral nationality. The arbitration proceedings will be conducted in a neutral country. The governing law could be of a neutral country. So you can play around. There's a lot of procedural flexibility. You can pick your own law, you can pick your own arbitrator, you can pick your seat, governing law. So you have a lot of choices, which is why international arbitration has been very successful for resolution of commercial disputes. But the states, they get involved as well. So the recent trend, the past 10-15 years, has been the rise of international commercial courts. And the idea basically is to provide a combination of arbitration and litigation, to provide the best of both. So the users, the parties who go to them, get the benefits of both litigation and arbitration. So there are several examples. Dubai International Financial Center has its own DIFC court. Abu Dhabi has this global market courts, ADGM. Qatar has one. It's called Qatar International Court and Dispute Resolution Center. Singapore, they set it up about 5 years ago, Singapore International Commercial Court. I think most recently, Astana in Kazakhstan, they have set up an international financial center, and so there is a court there as well. They have launched it. And then of course China International Commercial Court. China launched its commercial court about 2 years ago as well, and with one seat in the city called Shenzhen, one in Xi'an. Now, again, from a standpoint of commercial dispute resolution, what is the benefit of international commercial courts? State has some control because it's a court. It's not a private dispute resolution mechanism like arbitration. So the positive is that when the commercial court gives a decision, of course it is binding like an award, but the enforcement is easier as well because it's a court decision. One of the problems with the arbitration proceedings is that the arbitrator or the tribunal does not have coercive power. By coercive power, I mean if you go to the arbitrator, say, sir or madam, please pass an injunction. We think that while we arbitrate the dispute, this party will dispose of its assets. The arbitrator will say, I will be happy to give directions, but you cannot have them enforced until you go to the local court, right? So that's a disadvantage, especially if the matter is urgent. International Commercial Court solves that problem. They give you that advantage that if you want, let's say, injunctive relief, you want it quickly, you can get it from the same forum. You don't have to go to a different court to get that relief. So that's one advantage. Although for arbitration is considered very quick, very cheap, international arbitration unfortunately sometimes drags on for a long time, 2-3 years, and it costs a lot of money as well because the stakes are very high. So the parties do spend a lot of time and money to resolve the dispute. So one of the criticisms of international arbitration now is that it is not really that cost efficient or time efficient. So international commercial courts can deal with that issue better as well by having stricter, tighter deadlines for matters. So that's one thing, and of course they can save money as well. Another downside to arbitration is joinder of third parties. It's very easy. You do this all the time, I'm sure. You can join third parties to the proceeding. You cannot do that in arbitration because the fundamental principle of arbitration is mutual consent. Arbitration is a creature of the contract. If a party has not consented to that particular clause agreement, you cannot force that party to arbitrate. But in the case of litigation, court proceeding, you can file an application and implead a third party and join them. So in some international arbitration cases, this becomes a big problem. Two parties enter into an agreement, but there's an important third party. It could be a vendor, could be another business partner who did not sign that agreement, but it is very important for both the parties to have that third party join the proceedings. But you can't do anything about it. It's very difficult. International Commercial Court solves that problem as well. So it will give you that option of joinder as well. Lack of consistency. So one of the criticism of arbitration is it's confidential, which is again a benefit. Why do people arbitrate? They arbitrate because they want to keep their company's information, disputes confidential. Big businesses, reputable businesses don't want mudslinging in the public. Any self-respecting, honorable businessman or business would not want their reputation to be dragged in mud in public, right? Which unfortunately happens in court proceedings. So they pick arbitration. They say this is confidential. Whatever allegation is against us, whatever amounts are involved, we don't want the public to find out. International commercial courts don't give that option because it's a public forum. It's a court. It cannot be confidential. So arbitration has that advantage, but sometimes it becomes a disadvantage as well. And so international commercial courts, it's basically give and take. You have to sacrifice some of the benefits to get some other benefits. So if you want, let's say, to join third parties, you will have to give up confidentiality. If you want confidentiality, you will have to give that up. So it's always a trade-off, but I think the countries launching international commercial courts believe that they've offered the best of both. So that's another area they focus on. Absence of appeals. So this is one of the advantages, so to speak, that just the way an arbitral award is final and binding, just because you go to international commercial court doesn't mean that you can keep going on. But international commercial courts do have this option of appeals in some cases. So let's say you think the dispute involves $20 million, and you have faith in the arbitrator or the tribunal, yet when the decision comes, you think there are some defects in the judgment. Now, you cannot appeal that award. You can, of course, challenge it. The seat of arbitration is London. You can go to a local London court, most likely the English Commercial Court, and file a petition for setting aside the award because of some defects in it. But generally speaking, you cannot appeal it on the merits. So when International Commercial Court, what they offer to parties is you can arbitrate a dispute, but then you join the benefits of both, and you can also appeal that particular commercial court decision. So all of those people who are very concerned or paranoid about arbitration not have an appellate mechanism are actually happy about this, that international commercial courts offer them that option. Now, so again, as I said, every forum, every commercial dispute resolution mechanism has its advantages, disadvantages. One of the disadvantages of international commercial courts is lack of procedural flexibility. Of course, as judges, you do this every day, the procedure is set. There is no flexibility as such, right? You follow the civil procedure code or whatever relevant rules and regulations. In arbitration, you design your own procedure. You say, we will arbitrate under the rules of this institution, or we will choose ad hoc arbitration. We will not follow the rules of any institution. We will come up with our own rules. So you have flexibility. So let's say you want to say, we will have witness statements in writing. You can have that. We will not have any examination in chief orally. We'll have the witness statement in writing. You can do that. You can say that no party can submit a claim which is longer than 10 pages. No party can have more than 2 witnesses. You can do all that because parties can mutually agree on this. So you have flexibility, which is one of the things people appreciate. This is something you don't get in an international commercial court because it's a court. It has a certain set of rules that you have to follow strictly. There is no flexibility. But for those who prefer going to a court, they appreciate this benefit. And no confidentiality. So all those parties who value confidentiality, that's one of the things they have to give up. It will be public forum. The whole world will know about it. Because it's not even a domestic commercial court. It's an international commercial court, which is, at this point, they're not very busy. They're not deciding many cases. So DIFC LCA is one of the DIFC courts. They are one of those few courts which are fairly busy. I think Singapore National Commercial Court too, but the others sort of are catching up. So the very few cases that do end up before those courts, people find out about them. It's not for the masses, but people in the relevant industry. So let's say it's a dispute regarding a telecom company. Most telecom companies around the world will learn about them. Energy company, they'll find out. So there's no confidentiality. You have to be mindful of that as well. And of course, the right to appeal, that you have to give as well. So a bit about the Singapore National Commercial Court. So one of the reasons why this was launched, and I'm talking about a national commercial court, the courts we're setting up here are commercial courts, but again, I'm trying to stay on topic. The topic is global experiences. So the global experience, you don't have to just pertain to domestic commercial courts. We can learn from the international commercial courts experience as well. And the reason why Singapore National Commercial Court, or for that matter, other international commercial courts are set up, is to position the country in a very strategic way. So Singapore did it because, of course, it's a very strong economy. It's in East Asia. But they wanted to make sure that because of this international commercial court mechanism, other investors would be encouraged to come to Singapore. They already have a very, very successful arbitration center called the Singapore International Arbitration Center, but they said for those parties who are not comfortable arbitrating disputes, we will offer the international commercial court as well. So it gives them a lot of advantage in terms of attracting foreign investors. And Singapore is one of those countries which imports more services than it exports. And it's also the most open and competitive economy in the world. So they are actually, so if you have a case and you go before Singapore National Commercial Court, the judges of that court cannot decline to assume jurisdiction of a matter just because it has no connection to Singapore. You cannot say that the Singapore National Commercial Court would not decide a dispute that involves, let's say, Pakistan and the UAE. There is no requirement of a connection with the Singapore National Commercial Court. As long as parties have agreed to decide the dispute, they will assume jurisdiction. So they are unique in that sense. The composition of judges. Since it's an international commercial court, you don't just have Singaporean judges. You have judges from around the world. Because think about it. If you're investing in Singapore, if you're a Pakistani company going to Singapore, you would not be very comfortable going before the Singapore National Commercial Court if all of the judges are Singaporean. You'd say, this is like a domestic court. How is it different? So they have people from different nationalities. They have English judges. I believe they have Australian judges as well. So that gives them this image or semblance of a more independent and diverse court. So that's important. Judges also enjoy constitutional safeguards such as judicial immunity. A foreign judge, so let's say a British judge who goes to Singapore to be a judge of the Singapore National Commercial Court would also be very concerned about any potential liabilities or concerns regarding, let's say, defective judgment. So they gave them the safeguard or protection that there is immunity. That is not a license for them to pass unlawful, illegal judgments, but that's a protection to give them reassurance that you come to Singapore, you act as a judge, but you have immunity. So you use your independent mind without any fear or favor. That's the idea.
सर जो फॉरेन कंट्रीज हैं उसमें ये जो सक्सेसफुल रेशो चल रही है कमर्शियल केसेस में उनका तो आर्बिट्रेशन बहुत ज़्यादा है
Right.
उनके जरिए लेकिन हमारे यहाँ तो आर्बिट्रेशन इतनी कमर्शियल केसेस में है ही नहीं
So it's a difference in the culture. Culture का difference है.
सिविल स्कूल्स की तरह केसेस चल रहे थे पहले
And I think, unfortunately, please allow me to say this, जो arbitration start भी होती है, unfortunately ends up before the court और उनको stay मिल जाता है, arbitration का stay मिलता है, not court proceedings का. I think so.
हमारे पास कोई अपडेटेड लॉ भी नहीं आर्बिट्रेशन में अगर हम देखते हैं हिस्ट्री में
जी, जी.
लेजिस्लेशन की तरफ से कोई इसको बड़ा हौसला अफजाई नहीं हुई
जी,
जैसे
जी.
आर्बिट्रेशन एक्ट है या हम पीछे जाते हैं
हाँ जी.
इंटरनेशनल कमर्शियल आर्बिट्रेशन की तरफ देखते हैं उसकी जो डेवलपमेंट ऑफ लॉ है जैसे रिफा एक्ट है
Right.
उसमें आप जब कंपेयर करते हैं इंडिया से फॉर बेटर है
हाँ जी.
तो हमने रिफा एक्ट को यूनाइटेड नेशन कन्वेंशन एक्ट 58 को हमने साइन किया था 58 में तो हमने रेटिफाई किया 75 में
जी जी जी. हाँ जी.
हमारे जो लेजिस्लेशन का या स्टेट लेवल पे जो टेम्परामेंट है या उनका रिस्पांस है वही बड़ा स्लो है
Right.
जैसे मैम बात कर रही है कि हमारे इसमें हमने उस तरफ तवज्जो ही नहीं दी जिस वजह से आपने कहा कि इंटरनेशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट को अप्रिशिएट ही नहीं हमने किया और कभी हमारे कुछ लिहाज से भी है जैसे इंडिया में इम्प्रूवमेंट आई है
जी जी.
तो हमारे पास लेजिस्लेशन नहीं है अगर है तो आप नेशनल लेवल पे जो हम मैकेनिज्म रखते हैं आर्टिकल 1940 उसको भी अपडेट हमने नहीं किया वही उसका और जो हम इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे जो हमारा रिस्पांस है वो हमने 2005 में रेटिफाई किया और फिर भी ऑर्डिनेंसेस पे रहे
जी जी.
कि जिसका स्टैट्यूटरी पीरियड आफ्टर 120 डेज खत्म हो जाता है इवन देन दैट विल नॉट ब्रिंग एनी इंटरनेशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट वो ऑर्डिनेंसेस पे 10 इयर्स हमने ऑर्डिनेंसेस पे गुजारे
जी, जी.
अल्टीमेट 2011 में we were succeeded to get a refa तो ये इसका जवाब है कि इसमें एप्रिसिएशन ही नहीं है हमारे मुल्क में तो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह अभी ये स्पेशल कोर्स होते हैं
I personally think a law important है update होना. Our Arbitration Act, domestic arbitration law, is from 1940, before Pakistan was even created. It's a shame that in 80 years we haven't done anything about it. दूसरा, with due respect, I think a party that does not want to arbitrate will try its best to delay the whole process. They will go to a court, file an application, and get a stay order. My issue with that is, again, with due respect, the judges should not grant unnecessary stay orders, because if you look at section 34, so I mean, the focus is to stay court's own proceedings in favor of arbitration, refer the matter to arbitration. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it's the other way around. They stay the arbitration proceedings and assume jurisdiction. I think it's a mindset also. I think we need to build capacity in that area as well to train judges in how arbitration works, how it's sort of a parallel system, but it's a valid system, it's a legal system, works around the world. So there should not be any competition that, we have, superior authority. Of course, courts have their own position. What courts can do, the arbitrators cannot do. But there's a reason why parties pick arbitration. So I think the law is certainly, very old, it's outdated. But I think the application of the law has to change also. You could have I believe you could have the most modern arbitration law in Pakistan. You could just copy paste the British law. But I think if the application, so I'll quickly give you an example of 2011 REFA Act. After the enactment of that law, there has been at least one judgment, I will not name it here, which was passed in complete violation of the spirit of that law. and the honorable justices relied on a judgment from maybe 10-15 years ago, which was passed under the law that was repealed, the 1937 Act. So my point is, even in the presence of the new law,
सर
Hmm?
1930 का जिनेवा कन्वेंशन के तहत
right, right,
सर जो बेसिक एरिया है ना ये जो कंट्रोल करने के लिए उसको भी स्टडी किया सर लीगल प्रैक्टिशनर एक्ट बेहतर हो जाए उसकी इन्फोर्समेंट बेहतर हो जाए सर ये कहीं लॉ में नहीं लिखा हुआ कि पहली तरीक में स्टे जरूर है लेकिन देना पड़ता है
और आप
सर एक्चुअल ये है
और बाहर के जब नुमाइंदे आते हैं वो कहते हैं जी रिलीफ है ये हमारा राइट
कि ये देना है हर तरफ हर साइड से ये कहा जाता है ना कि अगर वो हो जाए बेहतर और उसकी इन्फोर्समेंट बेहतर हो जाए तो फिर लॉ सर बनेंगे तो ये आर्बिट्रेशन की इसी वजह से फेल हो गया
अब एक मैं
वो
गैस
नहीं देता
यूटिलिटी
arbitration।
ये गैस केसेस को डील कर रहा हूँ
जी।
यूटिलिटी जो कोर्ट स्पेशल कोर्ट उसमें बड़ा अच्छा किया उन्होंने कहा स्टे है ही नहीं जब तक डिपॉजिट नहीं होगी फुल स्टे का इख्तियार ही ले लिया कोर्ट
security, right, right, right.
एज सिक्योरिटी जमा कराए
बिल्कुल।
फिर गैस कोर्ट देख सकते
हाँ जी, हाँ जी।
उससे फिर वो जो जुरिसडिक्शन थी ना कि जी ये ऐसे करते हैं तो वो जज की जुरिसडिक्शन इन्होंने और किया अच्छा
Sir, I'll be very honest, I don't want this discussion to turn into discussion between lawyers and judges. I think वो जिसे कहते हैं ना two wheels of the same bus, and we have to work on this together. We're in this together, bar and bench. वो it's not an empty slogan. I believe in it. But I completely understand this criticism. मैं जी, I'm a lawyer myself. Some of the things I find very frustrating. वो ठीक है आपकी बात. जी जी जी. हाँ हाँ जी हाँ जी.
यही 13 फैन पे ऑफिस था
जी जी.
तो पता है कि लाहौर की CPC ऑल टुगेदर डिफरेंट है सर पूरे पंजाब से अभी रिसेंटली मैं लाहौर में सर्व करके गया हूँ 2 साल कि ये सब जो चीज़ है ये कंसिडर नहीं की जाती अथॉरिटीज़ जो हैं लॉ मौजूद है सर
जी जी.
लेकिन वो उसका प्रोसीजर और प्रैक्टिस डिफरेंट है सर
Right, right.
लाहौर में पॉसिबल नहीं है कि कोई टेम्परेरी इंजेक्शन ना दे इसी वजह से तो ये लिमिनी कंट्रोल का सर कॉन्सेप्ट ही नहीं है
जब कोई कानून बनाया जाता है उसका मिसयूज शुरू हो जाता है गैस यूटिलिटी कोड तो सिर्फ डिस्प्यूट्स ऑफ बिलिंग और मीटरिंग थे तो जिसने डेक्लेरेशन मेरा मीटर नहीं लगा रहा मेरी पैर से दूसरी कॉलोनियों को कनेक्शन ना दे हो गई गैस यूटिलिटी जब उसकी जुरिसडिक्शन ही नहीं वो तो लिमिट को अगर जाना तो सिविल कोर्ट में जाए
Because I think the mandate that you are being given, it's a very important mandate, and I think it could be historic if we make this work.
होना ये चाहिए कि अगर ये स्पेशल कोर्ट्स बनी हैं तो इसमें जो है ना कुछ रूल्स भी सेट होने चाहिए खासतौर पे इंटरनल स्टे के लिए जैसा हमारे थे कि सिक्योरिटी चार्जेस की बुनियाद पे अगर सिक्योरिटी चार्जेस नहीं आते तो हमारे लिए बड़ा आसान होगा उस केस को डिसाइड कर देना
जी जी.
अगर कमर्शियल केसेस में भी थोड़े रूल सेट हो जाएं या कुछ ऐसा हो तो वो हम इसको डिसाइड करना या जल्द डिसाइड करना वो आसान हो जाए
ठीक है.
इसको
ठीक.
थोड़ा लेवल तक सोचना
रिगुलर लिटिगेशन भी
Yes.
इंटरनल ना हो
जी, जी.
Rigorous भी तो आ जाती है
Right, 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 right.
जब तो स्पेशल लॉ बनता है तो रिगुलस भी लोग उसके जो क्लॉज हैं उसको वो ढूंढते हैं
वो जो केस करता है ना वो लॉ है वो लॉ साइडेड है वो सारा बैंक को सपोर्ट कर रहा है और
वो भी
तेरे
अच्छा
पहले
है।
दर्द आ जाए उसमें भी आप करना पड़ेगा फिर डिपॉजिट कराओ वो बेचारा भेजिए कहीं से कर सुनाने का है उसमें भी
So that's it. We could go on and on. I think issues तो बहुत ज़्यादा हैं. I am not denying that, but I personally think my approach to all these things is all we need is a few good men. कुछ अच्छे लोग हमें चाहिए, whether it's lawyers, judges. We cannot expect a complete overhaul of the system overnight. ठीक है ना? And we should not be very harsh on Pakistan either that no change can come about. I am generally an optimistic person, and I personally think this initiative can make a big difference because again at the outset I said you're the chosen ones. It's a very important mandate, and I understand the experiences of the past haven't been ideal, but I think maybe it's time to change that. And of course, this system will work more effectively if lawyers cooperate, and at a minimum, cooperation starts with respect. So I think maybe there should be a separate workshop for lawyers as well. I think we need quite a few, but I completely agree with you. But I personally think whatever duties are being assigned to the new judges, I think if you start performing them professionally, I personally think that the response from the lawyers should be good too. So it's as they say, enthusiasm is infectious. Similarly, I think professionalism is infectious. If you're a professional person, you will feel people around you, at least 2-3 people, they will at least start acting professionally. So I think hopefully these concerns should be taken care of once you officially start deciding cases. And I think, again, not to generalize, I think generally the nature of the matters is such that the parties, when they choose lawyers, I think they generally try to choose lawyers who will make sure that dispute isn't delayed, proceedings aren't delayed unnecessarily, they're more professional in their representation. So I think that should help also. So I think, yeah, it should be, I'm positive about it. But I agree, it's, there are a lot of issues, but hopefully we can deal with them. So yeah, coming back to Singapore National Commercial Court, by having the foreign judges, they have enhanced their credibility. Foreign investors look at Singapore National Commercial Court as a very credible independent court. And I'll be talking about the China International Commercial Court in a little bit, and you'll see how different they are from each other. A registered foreign lawyer who's registered in Singapore, even temporarily, can appear before the Singapore National Commercial Court. And they can make submission on foreign law. Similarly, if the parties agree, foreign rules of evidence. So there is no requirement that in the Singapore National Commercial Court you have to follow the Singapore Code of Civil Procedure or Rules of Evidence. There is no requirement. You can follow a different set of rules as well from a different country, as long as there is agreement by the party. So mutual agreement is key. Similarly, yeah, there's the option of appeal, because the Singapore National Commercial Court is part of the Singapore High Court, and the decisions are generally appealable to the Court of Appeal, unless again, if the parties have waived that right in an agreement, that the Singapore International Commercial Court decision will not be appealable. If they write it in their agreement, then that will be respected by the court. It will not be appealed, because everything is subject to mutual agreement. The court can't say, no, this is illegal. The court will have to respect that decision, and that decision cannot be appealed then. But if the parties have not clearly stipulated that there will be no appeal, then there will be the option of appeal. Now compare this to the China International Commercial Court. These were set up about 2 years ago, and again, the reasons why China set up these courts are very similar to why Singapore did it, because of course, China is on this very ambitious campaign called the Belt and Road Initiative, whereby they're setting up infrastructure across a wide range of regions in Asia, Africa. So they want to have a forum whereby their own investors feel comfortable. Currently what is happening is there's international arbitration whereby the Chinese, whether they're state-owned enterprises or private parties, they have to have their disputes arbitrated before arbitrators conducting proceedings pursuant to international arbitration rules. By setting up these courts, the hope is, or the goal is, that a lot of the Belt and Road Initiative disputes, they are brought before this court. So the Chinese investors will be comfortable, they'll know this court, they're familiar with it, it's set up in their own country. But there are a lot of question marks around it. One very obvious question mark is that all the judges of the China National Commercial Court are all Chinese judges. There is no foreign judge. That's a red flag right there. Why would a foreign investor want to go before that court when it is called an international commercial court, yet all the judges are local Chinese? So that's one issue. The other is only Chinese qualified lawyers can appear before those courts. So the assumption is that whoever writes in their contract that dispute will be decided by the China National Commercial Court, they will hire a local Chinese lawyer. So let's say if it's a French company, they have their own law firm that they work with, but when it comes to this matter, they will have to go find a lawyer in China. That's a requirement. So a lot of investors would be deterred by this because they're comfortable working with their own lawyer, then they have to find somebody else. So that's a problem as well. The procedure, all the proceedings are conducted in accordance with the Chinese civil procedure law. That doesn't sound very international to a lot of investors either. They say, okay, so essentially it is like a domestic court, local judges, local lawyers, local procedure. So that's why people are asking a lot of questions about the credibility or independence of these courts. There is no appeal of these judgments, but there's something called a retrial under their rules of evidence. So I think, which essentially works like an appeal, but they don't have an appeal option. So which is again something that is a cause for concern, because people say for the other international commercial courts, there's this appeal mechanism. If you go here, first of all, we're not very comfortable with all the local judges and local laws, and then on top of that, when the decision is rendered, it cannot be appealed. So it's early days. They launched it a couple of years ago, but I think they will have to make some changes if they want to make it work. I want to, I think getting towards the end, I think briefly talk about this convention on the recognition and enforcement of foreign judgments in civil or commercial matters. So you mentioned the RIFA, the Recognition of Enforcement of Foreign Arbitral Award, the New York Convention, under which foreign arbitral award. So foreign arbitral award, let's say Pakistan had a dispute with the German company, and the arbitration proceedings were conducted in London. Award was rendered there. It's a foreign award, and let's say the Pakistani company has lost that case. The award is brought to Pakistan, and under the RIFA 2011 Act, it will be enforced in Pakistan through the Court of Competent Jurisdiction, High Court essentially, if they want to recover on that particular award. Now, this is one of the big advantages of arbitration. This is why, because this New York Convention has been ratified by more than 100 countries. So people are very comfortable arbitrating, because you know when the decision is rendered, whether it's in Germany, England, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Dubai, a lot of these countries have signed, ratified, and enacted the law. And those countries will be able to enforce the award without a lot of issues. Now, that is a luxury which court judgments have not had. If you look at our own CPC, the reciprocity we have is with a couple of countries, primarily with the UK, when it comes to foreign judgments and decrees. Now, this convention, which basically has been issued by this entity called the Hague Conference on Private International Law, the goal of this convention is to have something similar to the New York Convention, whereby you can have a commercial court judgment from any country and have it enforced in another country. So there's reciprocity. So let's say you pass a judgment in a couple of months, right, and involves a foreign investor. That judgment, if that particular country has enacted, so let me just inform you that it has not been entered into force yet, but they're discussing it. So at some point it will be enforced. But if it is enforced, then any judgment from any country that has ratified that convention will be enforced in any other country that has also ratified it. Now, people think this could be a game changer for commercial court judgments. Some people even think that this could affect international arbitration, in the sense that people think that if the commercial court's judgments will be recognized as effectively as a foreign arbitral award, why don't we just go to commercial courts and have the case decided? And we get all the advantages of the court, such as joining third parties, injunctions and all those. So this is one thing you should be mindful of as well as commercial court judges. Hopefully Pakistan ratifies it as well. This could definitely help a lot of foreign investors think of Pakistan as a viable destination for foreign investment. So I will just read some relevant parts. It shall, again, it hasn't been entered into force yet, but whenever it is, it shall apply to the recognition and enforcement of judgments in civil and commercial matters. It shall not extend in particular to revenue, customs, or administrative matters. So it has a certain defined domain, jurisdiction, not all commercial matters, but specifically defined commercial matters. This convention shall apply to the recognition and enforcement in one contracting state of a judgment given by court or another contracting state. So let's say judgment passed in Pakistan, it goes to another contracting state, England, Germany, it will be given reciprocity. So that and I think that is why when I was preparing for this particular session, I was actually happy to learn about this, because I thought that, you know, if Pakistan has launched commercial courts, and once this convention is entered into force and hopefully we ratify it, the value or the weight of your judgments would go up considerably, because your judgment would not just stay in Pakistan. Your judgment could be taken to different jurisdictions where the parties to that particular dispute were, and essentially would become like a truly international commercial court judgment in that sense. So, yeah, please.
Private sector club के पास question है। वो government काफ़ी हो गई है दूसरे मुल्कों में डुअल नेशनैलिटी वाला
जी जी
फैमिली किधर होती है पाकिस्तान में
हाँ जी हाँ जी
यूके में है ये और प्रॉपर्टी जो है वो भी इसी तरह एक्सपेक्टेड है पाकिस्तान में ऐसे सूरत में अगर डिस्प्यूट बनेगा जो सीज केसेस पर बनेगा तो रिस्ट्रिक्शन कैसे डिटरमाइन होगी प्रॉपर्टी यूके में किधर है हमारे पास नेशनैलिटी यूके की भी है पाकिस्तान की भी है और उसकी बात के बाद डिस्प्यूट पैदा हो गया वो बस केस आ गए लोग कहते हैं यूके कोर्ट में रिस्ट्रिक्शन है वो कहते हैं पाकिस्तान पाकिस्तानी कोर्ट में तो ये प्राइवेट एक्ट लग कैसे
सो आई थिंक कंकरेंट जुरिस्डिक्शन होगी उसकी वजह यह है कि एज ए जनरल रूल you have to look for points of contact or connections with the jurisdiction. In your particular case, इसमें connection दो jurisdiction के साथ लग रहा है because वो dual national है, UK nationality भी उसकी residence भी है, दो points of contact बन के. He is also Pakistani national और let's say dispute arose in Pakistan तो उसमें है. But eventually it's up to the court to decide its jurisdiction. But I personally think कि इस तरह के matters में generally concurrent jurisdiction हो सकती है. There is no bar on that. As long as you can convince the court that under the law applicable to the proceedings in that court, there are sufficient points of contact with the jurisdiction for the court to actually assume jurisdiction. But yeah, it can be a grey area. You cannot say it with certainty. But that's why the profession of law is so exciting. A lot of things are uncertain, right? That's why we go to judges. That's why we have new decisions, new issues, new jurisprudence.
बहुत पुरानी जजमेंट थी जहाँ पूरा वफात पाएगा उस ना कमी से
नहीं, so if he is still alive, उसके मतलब जिंदा है.
बात है इस कंट्री में
जी जी.
बहुत पुरानी जजमेंट थी उसमें ये था कि उस कंट्री का राह पाएगा
Dual national.
हो गया, अगर
अभी वर्ल्ड का पोजीशन नहीं पता
अगर म्यूचुअली वो कंट्रीज एग्री नहीं है तो कंकरेंट रेवेन्यू होगा उनकी बाइंडिंग नहीं होगी दूसरे मुल्क अनलेस उनका पे उन्होंने
रेसिप्रोसिटी
है नहीं
रेसिप्रोसिटी का एग्रीमेंट अगर नहीं हुआ हुआ.
पंजाब में सर काफी डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स में ऐसे पोजीशन है कि वो उस तरह की नहीं है
ठीक है ठीक है.
बस इस केसेस पर भी ध्यान है
लेकिन so if it's not a strictly commercial matter, if we just talk about commercial matters, उसमें at some point of course एक कोर्ट को jurisdiction अपनी ख़त्म करनी पड़ी. You cannot go on forever, especially अगर आप simultaneously आप start कर देते हैं. Let's say one party जिसके लिए it's easier to go to the UK, they go to the UK courts, other party goes to Pakistani courts. So there is a conflict there. But my point was that to initiate proceedings, if the court is convinced that there is basis for jurisdiction, they can assume it. ठीक है. Subsequently, if it is challenged either in the foreign court or in the appellate court of the same jurisdiction, then that's a different thing. But I think on the face of it, it is possible. And it all depends on what that particular law says, how that has changed. But I think on the face of it, prima facie, parties should have the option of initiating proceedings in both countries. But I think they should not be able to abuse that particular option. Some parties do that to have, let's say, even conflicting judgments. So as long as it is not abused, I think principally and theoretically it is possible. Okay, I think I'll just wrap up. So yeah, this convention was the last part of the session. So the idea basically was that we learn from experiences from different jurisdictions. A lot of the jurisdictions, including the UK, the US, they're way ahead of Pakistan in terms of their jurisprudence, commercial courts, experiences. And then there are other countries, like the ones I quoted, Tanzania, Peru in Africa, South America, which are not that developed and which have tried out different things. Some have done well, some haven't done so well. So our job here was to analyze all the issues, all the trends, to see how we can avoid some of the pitfalls or disadvantages, some of the mistakes they made, to make sure that the commercial courts that are being launched here get off the ground, are successful and effective. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, I hope this was helpful. I enjoyed participating. I think it was fairly interactive as well. And of course, whenever I conduct a training session, I always try to learn from the people in the room as well. And I think all of you know a lot more than I do. So it was a very good learning experience for me too. And I thank you all. Good luck.